The day had finally come. The alien army, the Phyrexians, arrived on the planet Xera. They were a powerful species, feared across the galaxy. Their mission was clear: take control of Xera and add it to their ever-growing empire. Their fleet of warships hovered over the ruined planet, casting long shadows over the land below. The Phyrexians had heard stories about Xera. It was a planet that had suffered wars for years, and the once strong civilizations there had fallen apart. To the Phyrexians, this meant the planet was weak. It was easy pickings. Their leader, Commander Zovak, stood on the bridge of the ship, looking down at the desolate land below. He smiled, his sharp teeth glowing in the dark. "This will be an easy conquest," he said to his officers. "Send the soldiers down. We'll take control of this planet in no time." The Phyrexians began their attack. Hundreds of alien soldiers, each covered in advanced armor and carrying powerful weapons, dropped from the sky. They landed on the cracked ground, ready to sweep through the planet. But as they moved deeper into the ruined city, something strange happened. In the middle of the city, standing alone among the rubble, was a single soldier. His clothes were torn, and his armor looked old and worn. He wasn't anything special, at least that's what the Phyrexians thought. His helmet was damaged, revealing part of his face. He had a scar over his left eyebrow, and a serious look in his eyes. The Phyrexians, seeing how alone he was, didn't think much of him. "Just one soldier." Commander Zovak chuckled. "This will be easy. Send the scouts to handle him." A small group of Phyrexian scouts moved toward the lone soldier. They laughed as they walked, thinking that this would be a quick fight. They didn't even see the soldier as a real threat. He was just another survivor of the planet, doing what he could to stay alive. The soldier, however, stood perfectly still. His eyes never left the approaching scouts. He knew the aliens were dangerous, but he had a feeling they didn't know who they were dealing with. He reached down and pulled out his rifle from the ground beside him. It wasn't high-tech like the Phyrexians' weapons, but he knew how to use it well. The first Phyrexian scout approached, thinking he could easily overpower the human. But as the scout raised his weapon, the soldier moved fast, faster than any of them expected. In one smooth motion, he fired his rifle. The shot hit the scout right in the chest, and the Phyrexian dropped to the ground without making a sound. The other scouts froze in shock. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. A human, with an old, simple weapon, had taken down one of their own. But the soldier wasn't finished. He ducked behind a pile of rubble, reloading his weapon with quick, precise movements. The Phyrexians recovered quickly and charged forward, confident they would take him down. They thought he was just another survivor, weak and untrained. They didn't realize they had underestimated the human in front of them. The soldier popped up from behind the rubble, firing again. His rifle cracked loudly, and another Phyrexian scout fell. This time, the aliens started to panic. They had expected to crush this soldier in seconds, but now they were realizing this human wasn't as helpless as he looked. Commander Zovak, watching from his ship above, couldn't believe it. "How is this possible?" he muttered. "A human soldier, fighting like he's an experienced warrior. We must deal with this quickly." He ordered his forces to move in, bringing in even more Phyrexians to surround the human. The soldier could hear the sound of footsteps getting louder. They were coming for him from all sides. He wasn't afraid. He had fought before, and he knew how to survive. The soldier took a deep breath and got ready. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for his planet. He knew the Phyrexians wouldn't stop until they had control of everything, and he wouldn't let them win. But there was something else he knew that the Phyrexians didn't. They were about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. They had no idea that this human was not just any soldier. This soldier was part of a species that had survived countless dangers. Humans were tougher than the galaxy had ever realized. The soldier stood tall, aiming his weapon at the advancing Phyrexians. He didn't know if he would win, but he was going to make them pay for underestimating him. The battle had just begun, and he was ready to show them what humans were capable of. The Vrexian soldiers quickly surrounded the lone human, their powerful weapons aimed at him from every direction. The air was thick with tension. The human soldier stood in the middle of the battlefield, his hand steady on his rifle. He could hear the footsteps of the aliens closing in, but he didn't flinch. He had faced danger before, but something told him these creatures were different, stronger, faster, and more dangerous than anything he had fought in the past. But the aliens didn't know that. To them, he was just another soldier, a weak human standing in their way. They were the Vrexians, a mighty and advanced species, feared across the galaxy. They had destroyed countless planets and defeated the strongest armies. This planet, Sira, was no different. They had no reason to believe this human would be any different either. "Stay calm," one of the Vrexians whispered to the others. "We'll finish this quickly. He's just a human. He can't be any stronger than the rest." The Vrexians had faced humans before, but always in small numbers, always in weak, scattered groups. None of them had ever posed a real threat. They had watched entire fleets of ships get destroyed by their advanced technology, and they had never seen a human fight back like this. But they were confident. After all, how could a single human, with nothing more than an old rifle, possibly stand against them? The first Vrexian soldier took a step forward, aiming his energy weapon at the human. "Drop your weapon," he commanded, his voice harsh and full of authority. "You're outnumbered. Surrender now, and maybe we'll show mercy." The soldier didn't respond. He simply raised his rifle, taking aim at the closest alien. The Vrexians were still underestimating him. They thought this would be just another easy fight, but they didn't know that he wasn't alone. The human soldier's fingers tightened around the trigger. He fired, and the first Vrexian soldier fell to the ground with a loud thud. The aliens gasped. They hadn't expected that. They looked at each other, surprised and confused. But they quickly regained their confidence. It was just one shot. It didn't mean the human was strong. "Foolish human," one of the Vrexians said. "You will regret that." But the human didn't hesitate. He fired again, and another Vrexian dropped, his body hitting the ground with a loud crash. This time, the aliens couldn't hide their shock. The Vrexian soldiers had advanced weapons, shields, and armor, but this human soldier was knocking them down one by one. The remaining Vrexians stepped back, surprised by how easily the human moved. His aim was perfect, and his speed was unmatched. He wasn't like any soldier they had ever seen. The human was calm, precise, and deadly. He wasn't running. He wasn't panicking. He was focused on one thing: surviving and fighting back. They could feel it now. The tide of the battle was starting to shift. The Vrexians had thought they were in control, but now they were starting to doubt themselves. They had been so sure this human would be easy to kill, but the soldier's strength, his speed, and his relentless fighting spirit were forcing them to rethink everything. "Why can't we stop him?" a Vrexian soldier shouted, his voice filled with panic. "He's not just a regular human. He's something else. Keep firing." Another Vrexian barked. "We can't let him win." But it was too late. The soldier was already moving, faster than they could react. He was dodging their attacks, his rifle never missing a shot. The remaining Vrexian soldiers were starting to retreat, realizing they were up against more than they could handle. Commander Zovak watched from above, his eyes wide with disbelief. He had expected the battle to be over quickly. He had expected the human to fall to his knees, begging for mercy. Instead, he was watching his soldiers fall, one after the other. The alien commander couldn't understand how this human was so strong. How could one soldier, with no advanced technology, be doing this? Zovak had always believed that humans were weak, primitive beings. He had thought their kind was no match for the Vrexians, who had destroyed entire planets in the blink of an eye. But now, as he watched his forces crumble beneath the human's fire, he realized he had made a mistake. This wasn't just any soldier. This was a human soldier, and humans were far more dangerous than anyone had ever given them credit for. Commander Zovek's mind raced. "This is impossible," he muttered. "He should have been easy to defeat. How is he doing this?" The alien commander was no longer just angry. He was scared. He had underestimated this human, and now that mistake was costing him dearly. But the battle wasn't over yet. There were still more Phyrexian soldiers, and they weren't going down without a fight. The battle was far from over. The human soldier had already taken down several Phyrexians, but more were arriving. A wave of fresh, well-armed soldiers began to pour into the area, surrounding the human from all sides. Despite his earlier success, the soldier knew he was outnumbered. The Phyrexians had more weapons, more firepower, and more soldiers. But he didn't back down. He stood tall, gripping his rifle with both hands, his eyes scanning the battlefield. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of burning energy filled his nose. His heart raced, but he was calm. He had been in tougher situations before. This wasn't the first time he was surrounded by enemies who thought they were stronger. A Phyrexian soldier stepped forward, holding an energy sword that glowed with a bright, deadly light. "You fought well," the alien said, his voice low and confident. "But now it ends. Surrender now, and we'll spare your life." The human soldier didn't respond. He didn't need to. He knew that surrender wasn't an option. These aliens had invaded his planet, and they would not leave until they had what they wanted. He couldn't allow that. Not when there was still a chance to stop them. The Phyrexian with the energy sword lunged forward. The soldier barely had time to react, but his reflexes were fast. He dropped to the ground, rolling to the side as the sword sliced through the air where he had been standing only a second ago. The alien swung again, this time aiming for his head. But the human was quicker. He ducked low and fired his rifle, hitting the Phyrexian in the chest. The alien fell to the ground, lifeless. The other Phyrexian soldiers were now furious. They hadn't expected the human to be so skilled, so quick. They had assumed he was just a regular soldier, a weak human, but now they realized they had made a terrible mistake. They had no idea how strong humans could be. A loud voice boomed from behind. "Focus, all of you. He's only one soldier. We are many. Surround him and attack together." The Phyrexians quickly moved in, surrounding the human soldier from all sides. They were armed with a variety of weapons: energy rifles, plasma guns, and sharp blades. It seemed like there was no way out. The human soldier knew he couldn't fight them all at once. He had to think fast. He ducked behind a pile of rubble, using it as cover. The Phyrexians fired at him, their shots hitting the debris, sending dust and rocks flying into the air. But the soldier wasn't just hiding. He was waiting, calculating his next move. He knew that the Phyrexians didn't understand how fast humans could adapt. They thought he was just a primitive soldier with outdated tactics. But they didn't know that humans were survival experts. When faced with impossible odds, they found ways to win. The soldier peeked out from behind the rubble. One of the Phyrexians was walking too close. He took a deep breath and aimed his rifle at the alien's leg. He fired, hitting the soldier just below the knee. The Phyrexian stumbled, falling to the ground. Before the others could react, the soldier dashed forward, moving with surprising speed. He slid across the ground, taking out another Phyrexian with a quick shot to the chest. The remaining soldiers hesitated for just a moment. The human was faster than they thought. But now, they were more cautious. They didn't charge in blindly. They surrounded the soldier from every angle, forcing him to move. The human soldier was out of cover, but he wasn't giving up. He sprinted forward, using the environment to his advantage. He jumped onto a nearby wall, using it to launch himself into the air. Mid-flight, he fired his rifle, hitting one of the aliens in the shoulder. The Phyrexian screamed, but the soldier didn't stop. He landed on the ground, rolling to his feet, and quickly took cover behind another pile of rubble. The Phyrexians were now visibly frustrated. They couldn't keep up with the human. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't hit him. He was too fast, too unpredictable. One by one, they fell, until only a handful remained. Commander Zovac watched from above, his face twisted in anger and disbelief. His soldiers, who had once been unbeatable, were being defeated by a single human soldier. He couldn't understand it. How was this possible? Humans were supposed to be weak, primitive creatures. Yet here was one of them, taking down his best soldiers with ease. "Enough," Zovac shouted. "Send in the heavy artillery." Moments later, massive, armored Phyrexian soldiers began to march forward. These soldiers were much larger and more powerful, wearing thick armor and carrying heavy plasma cannons. They were designed for combat in extreme conditions, and they were more than a match for most enemies. But even they had no idea what they were in for. The human soldier gripped his rifle tighter. The fight was about to get harder, but he was ready. He had faced stronger enemies, and he had survived. This would be no different. The battle raged on. The human soldier was now fighting with everything he had, using his skills and the environment to outmaneuver the aliens. He couldn't afford to stop. Not now. The future of his planet depended on him. The human soldier stood, breathing heavily, his rifle aimed at the Phyrexians. His body was bruised, his clothes torn, but he didn't show weakness. He had already defeated a dozen of these alien soldiers, but he knew this wasn't over. The worst was yet to come. The heavy artillery Phyrexians were getting closer. These soldiers were huge, nearly twice the size of the regular Phyrexians. They wore thick armor, and each one carried a massive plasma cannon capable of destroying whole buildings with one shot. Their steps shook the ground, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. The human soldier didn't hesitate. He fired another shot, hitting one of the smaller Phyrexians in the chest. The alien stumbled and collapsed. But he wasn't celebrating. He had just taken down one enemy, but the heavy artillery soldiers were still coming. The first of the huge Phyrexians raised its plasma cannon, pointing it directly at the human. The soldier's heart skipped a beat. The power of that cannon could wipe him out in an instant. But there was no time to run. He had to act fast. The Phyrexian pulled the trigger, and a burst of green energy shot from the cannon. The blast was so strong it lit up the sky, leaving a trail of smoke in its wake. The human soldier dove to the side, barely escaping the blast as it crashed into the ground where he had just been standing. The explosion sent rocks and debris flying in all directions. The soldier quickly got back to his feet. His mind raced. He couldn't keep dodging these attacks forever. He had to find a way to fight back. The Phyrexians were getting closer, and their cannons were getting more accurate. He sprinted across the battlefield, using the scattered rubble for cover. He fired shots as he ran, hitting a few Phyrexians, but it was clear that the heavy artillery soldiers were far stronger than the rest. His bullets barely made a dent in their armor. The human soldier stopped behind a large rock, taking a moment to catch his breath. His muscles were burning from the constant movement. His vision was blurry, but he focused, steadying his breathing. He had to keep going. The fate of his planet depended on it. From behind the rock, he could see the huge Phyrexian soldier charging towards him. The soldier fired again, but this time, the shot ricocheted off the Phyrexian's thick armor. The alien roared in anger, swinging the plasma cannon with deadly precision. The human ducked and rolled to the side just in time, but the cannon's blast destroyed the rock he had been hiding behind. Now he was fully exposed. The human soldier quickly looked around, searching for anything he could use. There had to be something. Then he saw it, a Phyrexian energy blade, dropped by one of the smaller soldiers he had taken down earlier. It was still glowing with power. If he could get to it, he might have a chance. With no time to waste, the soldier sprinted toward the blade, his legs pumping with all the strength he had left. But the giant Phyrexian was already aiming its cannon again. The human knew he wouldn't make it in time, but he didn't stop. At the last second, just as the Phyrexian fired, the soldier dove forward, grabbing the energy blade and rolling to the ground. The plasma shot hit the ground just inches from him, sending dirt and sparks flying. He scrambled to his feet, now holding the Phyrexian energy blade. It felt strange in his hands, but it was powerful. The blade crackled with energy, and the soldier felt a surge of confidence. The giant Phyrexian charged at him, swinging the plasma cannon like a club. But the soldier was ready. He ducked under the cannon's swing and brought the energy blade down with all his might. The blade cut through the Phyrexian's armor like it was paper, and with one clean strike, the alien fell to the ground, its massive body crashing against the earth with a deafening thud. But there was no time to celebrate. The other Phyrexians were closing in. They had seen what the human could do now, and they were furious. The remaining soldiers began to circle him, their weapons raised. The human soldier stood his ground, panting heavily. He had no choice now but to fight. He had no idea how much longer he could keep going. His body was exhausted, and his vision was starting to fade. But the fight wasn't over yet. The Phyrexians attacked all at once. Their weapons fired in a deadly storm of plasma and energy. The human soldier dodged and fired back, using the energy blade to parry some of the attacks. He was fast, but the sheer number of enemies was overwhelming. Each time he took down one, two more seemed to appear. A plasma shot hit him in the side, and he grunted in pain. The human stumbled, almost losing his balance, but he didn't fall. He pushed through the pain, determined not to give up. He turned, taking out another Phyrexian with a shot to the chest, but the fight was wearing him down. His body was screaming for rest, but he couldn't stop now. Not when the Phyrexians were so close to victory. The human soldier was facing his hardest battle yet. His chances of survival were slim, but he wasn't going to quit. He was a human soldier, and humans never gave up. The battle raged on. The human soldier was covered in dirt and blood, his uniform tattered from the fierce fight. The Phyrexians were relentless, but so was he. He had already taken down countless enemies, but with each fallen soldier, more replaced them. The heavy artillery Phyrexians were still on the move, their massive plasma cannons swinging toward him with deadly precision. The human soldier knew he couldn't keep going much longer. His body ached, and his movements were slowing down. He was starting to lose focus, his vision blurry from exhaustion. But he couldn't stop now. There was too much at stake. Earth depended on him. As he ducked behind a pile of rubble, narrowly avoiding another blast, he heard something that made his heart skip a beat. A voice. Not one of the Phyrexians. It was different. Familiar. "Soldier, it's time." The voice was calm, yet powerful. The human soldier's eyes widened. He recognized it instantly. It was his commander, General Carter, the leader of his unit. But how was he here? The soldier thought back to when the battle began. General Carter had been on a different mission, far away from the battlefield. There was no way he could have gotten here so quickly. And yet here he was, speaking directly to him. The soldier had always trusted his commander, but this was something else. "Commander Carter," the soldier called out, his voice hoarse. "Where are you? What's going on?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, from the sky above, a large, sleek ship descended. The ship was unlike any the human soldier had ever seen before. It was massive, with glowing blue lights along its edges and a smooth metallic surface that shimmered in the sunlight. It hovered above the battlefield, casting a large shadow over the chaos below. The soldier stared at the ship, his mind racing. He had never seen anything like it before. Was this the reinforcements he had been waiting for? Before he could even process the thought, a hatch on the ship opened, and out stepped a figure, a human figure, wearing a black combat suit and a helmet that reflected the light. The soldier's heart pounded in his chest as the figure approached. "General Carter." The soldier asked again, his voice trembling with disbelief. The figure didn't answer right away. Instead, the figure removed their helmet, revealing a face the soldier knew all too well. It was his commander, General Carter, but there was something different about him. The general's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and his skin had an unusual faint shimmer to it. The soldier took a step back, stunned. What happened to you?" The general smiled, but it wasn't the usual warm smile the soldier was used to. It was cold, distant, as if the man standing before him was not the same person he had fought alongside for years. "It's not what you think, soldier," General Carter said, his voice calm and steady. "I didn't come here for reinforcements. I came here because it's time for you to understand the truth." The human soldier felt his stomach twist. What was the general talking about? He had always believed that the humans were fighting to protect Earth, to defend their planet from the alien invasion. But now, it seemed like everything was unraveling. "I don't understand," the soldier said, shaking his head. "What truth? What are you telling me?" General Carter's expression softened, and for a moment, it almost seemed like the man the soldier once knew was back. But it was gone in an instant. "You've been fighting for Earth," the general began, his voice now more serious. "But Earth is not the only thing we're protecting. We've been using you, using all of you, for a much bigger purpose. A purpose you're not yet ready to understand." The soldier's mind raced. "What are you talking about?" "I've been fighting for my planet. I've been fighting for my home." General Carter looked at him, his glowing eyes now flickering with something darker. "The truth is that Earth is not just a planet. It's a key to something far greater. And you've been part of something much bigger than you realize." The soldier's chest tightened as the weight of the general's words sank in. A key to what? The general didn't respond right away. Instead, he stepped forward, raising his hand toward the sky. Suddenly, the ship above them began to glow even brighter, and a massive energy field appeared around the battlefield. The Vrexians, for the first time, seemed to hesitate, their eyes drawn to the ship. They weren't firing anymore. They were watching. The human soldier looked at the ship, his confusion deepening. What was happening? "You see," General Carter said, his voice now filled with a strange power. "This battle, this war, it's just the beginning. You've been part of a much bigger plan. Earth has always been more than just a planet. It's the birthplace of an ancient power. And now, it's time to unlock it." The soldier couldn't believe what he was hearing. Earth, his home, was a key to something ancient, to something powerful. He had thought he was fighting to protect his people, but now, it seemed that he was part of something else, something far bigger than he had ever imagined. The general turned and looked at the ship, his expression cold. "It's time for the next phase. We've waited long enough." The soldier stood there, stunned, his mind racing. Nothing made sense anymore. But one thing was clear. This fight was far from over. The battlefield had fallen silent. The once deafening noise of plasma cannons, blaster fire, and roars of alien soldiers was gone. The Vrexians, the fierce invaders, stood frozen in place, eyes wide, staring at the human soldier and General Carter. Something had changed, and the fear was beginning to settle in. The Vrexian soldiers, once so confident, now looked unsure. Their massive bodies shook slightly as they glanced at each other, unsure of what was happening. Their weapons were still raised, but they hesitated to fire. It was as if they were waiting for something. The human soldier stood beside General Carter, his body still aching from the fight. The shock of learning the truth about Earth and its hidden power was still fresh in his mind, but now he had to focus. He looked at the Vrexians, trying to understand what had caused this sudden shift. General Carter was calm, almost too calm. His eyes glowed faintly, and there was a strange confidence in the way he stood. The human soldier couldn't help but wonder how much of what was happening was part of the general's plan. But there was no time to question it now. The aliens were no longer acting like the unstoppable force they once were. The tension in the air was thick. The Vrexians seemed to sense it too. They slowly lowered their weapons, their movements stiff, as if they were trying to make sense of what had just happened. They had been confident in their victory before, but now they were uncertain. One of the Phyrexian commanders, towering over the others, stepped forward. His armor gleamed under the light, but his face was filled with unease. He looked at General Carter with a mixture of fear and confusion. This cannot be," the Phyrexian commander growled. You are human. How can you have such power?" The human soldier could feel the weight of the question. How indeed? Just moments ago, he had been fighting for his life, fighting to protect his home. But now he was standing with someone who seemed to hold the fate of this battle in his hands. General Carter didn't answer right away. Instead, he raised his hand, and the ship above them began to glow even brighter. A powerful wave of energy radiated out from the ship, and the ground beneath them trembled. The Phyrexians staggered, struggling to stay on their feet. "This is no ordinary human." General Carter finally spoke, his voice calm and powerful. "Earth is not what you thought it was. It is the birthplace of an ancient force, a force you cannot comprehend. And now it is waking." The Phyrexian commander took another step back, his eyes narrowing. He was clearly trying to process the information, but fear was creeping into his voice. You cannot be serious," the commander said, his voice trembling. "We have fought countless species, conquered worlds, destroyed civilizations, and now you tell us that a primitive race like humans are the key to something greater." General Carter's gaze hardened. "You are foolish to underestimate Earth and its people. You are foolish to think you could conquer us." The Phyrexian commander was silent for a moment, his eyes shifting nervously. He had been confident in his victory, certain that the Phyrexians would crush Earth's defenses. But now, with the human soldier and General Carter standing before him, the tables were turning. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew that it was something he didn't understand. As General Carter spoke, the human soldier could feel a strange energy building in the air. It wasn't coming from the ship above them. It was coming from the ground itself. The energy that had been hidden in Earth for centuries was stirring, awakening, and the Phyrexians could feel it too. The soldiers began to shift uneasily, some of them stepping back. Their weapons were still raised, but their hands were shaking. It was clear that something was happening, something they could not control. "You may have conquered other worlds," General Carter continued, his voice now tinged with anger. "But Earth is different. We are different. And you will learn that the hard way." The Phyrexians were no longer the confident invaders they had once been. Fear had replaced their arrogance. They could feel the power in the air, could sense that something was shifting, something they had no control over. The Phyrexian commander, his face now twisted with doubt, looked to his soldiers. The fear was clear in their eyes now, the once terrifying force now showing signs of hesitation. We are not ready for this," the commander muttered, his voice barely audible. The human soldier could feel the tension building. He knew that the next moments would be crucial. The Phyrexians had tasted fear, something they had never experienced before, and it was spreading like wildfire. With a sudden motion, General Carter raised his hand again, and the ground trembled even more violently. The air crackled with energy, and the Phyrexians' weapons suddenly malfunctioned, their plasma cannons sparking and sputtering in their hands. The fear that had once been hidden behind their tough armor was now fully visible. The Phyrexians weren't just confused, they were afraid. And it was a fear that made them hesitate, a fear that gave the human soldier and General Carter the advantage. For the first time, the Phyrexians realized that they might not be as invincible as they had once believed. Earth wasn't just a planet to conquer, it was a force to be reckoned with. The aliens had made a grave mistake, and now they would have to face the consequences. The battlefield was still, the tension thick in the air. The Phyrexians, once so confident in their strength and power, now stood unsure. Fear had spread among them like wildfire. The earth trembled beneath their feet, and the energy from the human forces filled the air. They could feel the weight of the power around them, something they had never faced before. General Carter stood tall, his expression calm but determined. The human soldier beside him was ready, knowing what was coming next. The Vrexians were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. The Vrexian commander tried to rally his troops, his voice shaking but still commanding. "Regain your composure," he shouted, his words barely heard over the growing hum of power around them. "We have faced worse. We have conquered stronger enemies. Do not let these humans fool you." But the soldiers around him were not so sure anymore. They could feel the shift in the air, the energy crackling with a power they didn't understand. Their weapons were still malfunctioning, sparks flying from their cannons. They had never experienced anything like this, and it was starting to show. One of the Vrexian soldiers, his hands trembling, glanced at his commander. "We should retreat," he whispered. "This is not what we expected." The commander shot him a furious look. "Coward," he spat. "Do not speak of retreat. We are Vrexians. We conquer." But his words lacked the strength they once had. The doubt was spreading among them, and the once feared invaders were now questioning their ability to win. They had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price. Meanwhile, General Carter took a step forward, his voice calm but strong. "You've made a grave mistake. You thought Earth was weak. You thought humans were easy to conquer. But you were wrong." The Vrexians, still reeling from the power in the air, didn't move. They were caught in a moment of hesitation. The human soldier, standing beside the general, could feel the fear in the Vrexian ranks. They were realizing that their strength was nothing compared to what Earth had hidden. The human soldier raised his weapon, ready for whatever came next. He didn't know exactly what was happening, but he could feel the power growing. He had no doubt that the humans were about to show the Vrexians what real strength looked like. The Vrexian commander turned to his troops again, his voice filled with anger. "Fight. Show them who we are." But even as he spoke, it was clear that the fight was already slipping from their grasp. The ground shook with even more force, and the Vrexians could feel the power rising, something ancient and unstoppable. The energy coming from the human side was like nothing they had ever experienced. It was like the very planet itself was fighting back. And then it happened. The sky above them flashed with brilliant light, and a wave of energy surged through the battlefield. The Vrexian soldiers cried out in pain as the power overwhelmed them. The ground beneath their feet cracked and split, sending them stumbling backward. General Carter raised his hand, and the energy intensified. The Vrexians were now on the defensive. They fired their weapons, but they were no match for the power now coursing through the air. The human soldier felt it, too, the rush of energy, the strength that came from deep within the Earth itself. "You are not the conquerors here," General Carter said, his voice rising with authority. "Earth stands strong. We stand strong." The Vrexians tried to regroup, but it was too late. Their once advanced technology failed them. Their weapons were useless, their ships grounded, and their soldiers scattered. The tide had turned, and there was no going back. The human soldier looked around, seeing the fear in the faces of the Vrexian soldiers. They were no longer the terrifying invaders. They were now just another enemy facing a force far greater than they could ever understand. General Carter stepped forward again, his voice booming across the battlefield. "This is the strength of Earth. This is the power of humans. And you will learn to respect us." The Vrexian commander, his face twisted with anger and fear, tried to rally his troops one last time. "Fight. Fight for our home. Fight for victory." But the soldiers no longer listened. They had seen the truth. They had seen the power of Earth, and they knew they were no match for it. The once proud Vrexians, the conquerors of many worlds, were now broken. The fear that had begun to spread among them was now complete. They had come to Earth thinking they would crush it, but now they were the ones who were crushed. The human soldier stood tall, his weapon lowered. He looked at General Carter, who nodded in approval. The battle was over, and the humans had won. They had shown the Vrexians that Earth was not to be underestimated. They had shown them that humans were a force to be reckoned with. The Phyrexians, now retreating, had learned a hard lesson. Earth was not just a planet to be conquered. It was a death world. A world where humans stood strong, where they fought for what was theirs, and where they never gave up. The humans had won, and the Phyrexians would never forget it.